Before we get into this video, my lawyer has asked me to read this. If you have any questions about it, please direct them to Steve Tuggle, somewhere in California. College roommate, great lawyer. Anyways, this advice should not be taken seriously. You should not try to replicate anything said here. If you do, there is a risk of ruining a project, ruining a friendship, or worse, diabetes. Please understand this is not meant to be taken seriously, and if you are intending to sue me at any point, do know there is no money in this banana stand. At some point, we have all cut a board too short. That's okay. In fact, maybe it's better. Picture this. You're building some cabinets. You want to have them across the whole wall. If you were to cut every board 2 inches shorter, what would you have? You'd have the same 5 cabinets, but now you would have room for a 6th cabinet. You have just created space by making a mistake. I'm not saying you always have to do this, but just consider it. Think about it. We can create space with our mistakes. Every home you've ever lived in, or apartment, or doghouse, or whatever, you've thought, boy, I wish I had some more space in here. Well, now picture going forward. With every piece of furniture you build, you have the ability to create new space that wouldn't have been there. Do not look at cutting a board too short as an accident. Look at it as creating new space. If you're an American, you've grown up using the imperial system. Inches, feet, yards, stuff like that. You should consider moving to the metric system. Why? Well, it probably works better, or at least British people say that. But really, what we want is the ability to annoy people. How many millimeters is that, you ask? They say, I don't know, it's 16.5 inches. And you say, don't you know the conversion? You can now act superior to all of your woodworking buddies who use the imperial system, because you don't have to know what 1/128th is. You know, it's 16.39 millimeters. At some point in your woodworking journey, you are going to get interested in vintage tools. Not to use them, but to store them on the shelf and show off to other people. As a true woodworker, what you want to do is find the best deals, the best value for good old tools, and then put them on the shelf to display. The worst thing possible is for someone else who doesn't have as much money to be able to buy a vintage tool and use it. I've already ruined this by using it right now. Had I left this on the wall, it may be really valuable in 40 years. This could even be a retirement fund right here. There definitely weren't 7 million of these made every day in the 1950s. So consider looking into old tools to store on your shelf and prevent other people from ruining. Now, as an experienced woodworker, you've made many projects, but one thing you always make sure to do is point out your mistakes. Not because you have to, but because you are fishing for compliments. Point out that, ooh, bad saw cut. And Linda, she'll say, it looks amazing to me, and you make sure to follow that up with and say, it could have been better. And Linda will again say, it's beautiful. You have now received 2 more compliments about your work than you would have if you had said nothing. Always make sure to point out a mistake just in case somebody may add compliments to your ego. Now, whenever you go to a friend's house to visit them, point out their furniture and say it's really nice. They're going to say, yeah, we paid a lot for it. And you're going to then say to them, I could have built it for so much cheaper. Keep saying this every time to all of your friends, and eventually one of them will ask you to build something for cheaper. They'll likely bring out a catalog or point to something online and say, boy, this is expensive. Can you make it for less? Don't answer in the moment. Tell them that you will provide a quote in a few days. In a few days, you send them a text message and you quote them for 3 times the price listed online. And when they say, I thought you could do it for cheaper, you reply, this is custom work. It's going to be more expensive. If you want to buy factory-made crap, go for it, Linda. You are getting custom work if you pay my price. As a woodworker at some point, you will have encountered oak, specifically white oak, but also red oak, and you'll have noticed there's some weird markings on there. Now, these are medullary rays, and what you need to immediately do before the project is finished is sand those out. You want to keep sanding until those little weird marks that look kind of cool actually are gone. Anytime you leave those on, people will immediately know you have no idea what you're doing. Do not give up. It's going to take a while. You're going to think, am I going a little too far? No. Get those medullary rays, those ray flecks, off of your pieces of oak. They are not good, and they're the sign of amateurism. Now, as a true woodworker, at some point you're going to come across someone who has used pocket holes on their project. This is your chance to feel superior to them. Make sure to say, you could have done that with a dado, or maybe you could have mortise and tenon that. Do not let them know that you have a pocket hole jig at home that you use all the time. If you're at your friend's house and you see they have cabinets made with pocket holes, make sure to say something like, wow, I kind of thought you'd buy better cabinets. They use pocket hole joinery on these. Never let anyone know that you use pocket holes, and always use pocket holes as a chance to act superior to other woodworkers. Now, as a true woodworker, you will have made many crosscuts before, and you will have many to come. At no point ever should you do anything to try and mitigate tear out. You will notice there is no zero clearance backing on my miter gauge, not because I'm lazy, but because I do not bow down to the whims of tear out. I would rather spend a ton of time having to try and fix mistakes than allow tear out to control my life. I am not going to spend time drilling 2 holes so I can put a sacrificial fence on top of this miter gauge. That is unacceptable and a sign of weakness. Do not do anything at any point ever to try and prevent tear out. You are better than that. At some point in your woodworking journey, you are going to consider whether or not to buy a dust collector, and it's probably going to have one of these bag systems on the bottom. At no point ever should you change this before it gets full. You should wait until this is entirely filled and it falls off. Why, you might ask? Well, because then you can ask for help in putting it back on, and you call a friend over to put it back on. You slowly back away and you watch them try to deal with this. At no point ever should you spend a bunch of time trying to deal with this. You do not have to do it. Your time is far too valuable than to be spent changing this thing on and off and emptying it out. It's meant to be filled. That's why it's so big. If they didn't want it to be filled, they would have a fill line. Of course. For anyone out there who works in the tool production world, when you build a machine like this, you should put one of these safety keys on there. But you should make sure it is so tight and hard to get out that no one ever does. Just in case, you should also write pull out or remove on there. But make sure it is so tight that no one ever removes it. We don't want this little yellow thing ever coming out of there. But again, make sure to put pull out lock on there to make people think that it's supposed to come out. Good job, Wen. You did a good job. I cannot get that out of there. At this point, you're probably thinking, wow, this has been so much good advice. I can't wait to... Wait, hold on a sec. Do I go this way? Does that open it? No, that... Okay. What was I saying? I don't know. Thanks for joining me today, though. Bye.